5 years after the outbreak of the zombie virus, 2 bandits specializing in robbery emerged in this region. They had just left the house today without finding a target to strike, but coincidentally, an engine roar suddenly came from behind them. They turned back, a smirk appearing on their faces as if to say, "The sheep have delivered themselves to the slaughter." A small truck was approaching. Instead of fleeing upon seeing them, the driver drove straight up and stopped in front of them. 2 middle-aged men in white coats got out of the vehicle, raising their hands and walking forward to make a friendly introduction. Raleigh explained they were dentists, offering teeth-cleaning services to apocalypse survivors in exchange for a small donation of goods. If they had nothing to donate, a smile would suffice. Seeing the bandits' indifference, Rory invited them to the back of the van to enjoy the service first. The bandits exchanged glances but didn't refuse. The co-driver had already arranged 2 chairs and even considerately placed a ladder. Appearing quite professional, the 2 brothers, skeptical yet curious, climbed up. With guns in their hands, they weren't worried about any tricks these 2 might play. Moreover, it looks like they should really be doctors who clean teeth in exchange for supplies. The men equipped them with devices and then released some gas, making them feel euphoric and thoroughly enjoy the experience. Raleigh slowly walked to the side and flipped an electric switch. Yes, it's a bit of a joke that the 2 unlucky robbers met their traffickers today. Their fate was likely not going to be a pleasant one. However, Team X, en route to California, happened to pass by. What kind of sparks would fly between them and the traffickers? Team X had studied the map. This area was part of the Mississippi River Basin, and taking the water route could save a lot of time. After a long search, they found a boat by the river, still occupied by several zombies. Without saying a word, Roberta drew her longsword and led her team up to the boat to take out the zombies.
Whoa, easy. I don't want any trouble.
What are you doing here?
It's my boat.
Makes sense.
Under the canvas, they found a living person. Skipper tried to resist, but when Vasquez pointed a gun at his head, he quickly learned his lesson. Fearing for his life, Skipper hastily offered to pilot the boat, claiming knowledge of the area. After hearing this, Vasquez put away his gun, and Skipper immediately sat down to start the boat. So, they progressed along the Mississippi River. The scenery around them was breathtaking, and they couldn't help but relax. The surrounding scenery was beautiful, allowing them to relax a bit, and if all went well, they would soon reach their next destination, Memphis. But things are seldom that smooth. Doc saw something floating in the distance that looked familiar. As they all looked in the direction he was pointing, they couldn't believe their eyes. It was them, the weapon-dealing sketchy brothers. What a coincidence! The audience might remember that Addie's spiked bat and the sniper rifle 10K gave to the woman were both acquired from these brothers. Since they were old acquaintances, they were also pulled aboard the boat. Sketchy and his brothers seemed to have fallen on hard times. No one knew what they had been through recently. Once they boarded the boat, Sketchy's true colors as a merchant were fully exposed. He never stopped talking, boasting about how well he was doing and even claiming they had met the legendary Murphy.
Got him with the Murphy.
Murphy, who was sitting nearby, was so surprised he quickly asked what the real Murphy looked like.
Over 7 feet tall, red eyes, teeth like a mountain goat. He walks around on all fours, and he can blend into his surroundings like a chameleon.
Yeah, when we saw him in Louisiana, he was green as moss. We saw him again a week later in Texas, and he looked like dirt.
Team X collectively fell silent, with no one contradicting him. They wouldn't be foolish enough to reveal anything about Murphy. The fewer people who knew, the better. However, they also learned from them that the public was almost universally aware of Murphy's existence and depicted him as an omnipotent figure. The sketchy brothers continued to make up stories non-stop. Vasquez, unable to stand it anymore, threatened to throw them overboard if they didn't shut up. Immediately, the sketchy brothers frantically said they couldn't do that. The river downstream was full of zombies, and they needed to turn around. He even swore that what they were saying was true this time and not made up, but Vasquez didn't believe a word. They were just 2 big talkers and liars. Suddenly, the boat shook violently. The water was indeed full of zombies, likely awakened by the argument. Before they knew it, several zombies had climbed aboard.
Zombies on board!
10K was the first to jump into the water, with the others quickly following. Half an hour later, 10K struggled to climb to the shore, but when he looked back, the others were not behind him. Obviously, he was separated from the group. 10K could only look around the neighborhood first. He hadn't gone far when he spotted Sketchy fixing his hair.
Where's your buddy?
Curtains. Saw him go down. He chose to sink, while you and I chose to swim.
True to his nature as a merchant, Sketchy dramatized his solo escape as a tragic tale, claiming that Skeezy had voluntarily stayed behind to sacrifice himself. Sketchy just finished. A sound came from the distance. They ran over to see it was Skeezy. At that moment, Skeezy was left with only half his body on the ground, howling.
Hey, cut it out! Cut it out!
Come
Cut
on,
it out!
no, do it!
Stop! I fell in a damn hole!
Oh.
Get me out of here! I thought you said he...
It all seemed like a comedy. 10K is not impressed. This pair of brothers do not have a word of truth in their mouths in the end of the world, and there are human traffickers is really too ridiculous. As 10K was about to leave, Sketchy started his sales pitch again, saying he would help find his teammates, and that they should support each other. He even promised to find 10K a girlfriend. At that, 10K was tempted and decided to follow them. Meanwhile, downstream, Team X had all survived and were loudly calling for 10K. Doc, the elder, was very concerned about 10K and even wanted to swim across to search, but Murphy and Vasquez stopped him. They argued that going to California was the priority and they couldn't delay their journey for one person, and besides, 10K might be waiting for them up ahead. Even Roberta and Addie agreed. Reluctantly, Doc hoped that 10K would be waiting for them ahead. What Team X didn't know was that 10K and the Sketchy brothers were about to have very bad luck. They hadn't gone a kilometer before they encountered several armed men demanding they hand over everything and leave their territory. The Sketchy brothers turned their pockets inside out, revealing nothing. Even in this tense atmosphere, Sketchy was unflustered. His next move made me really see what is called fooling.
An eye towards progress and future generations. What if I told you today's your lucky day?
Oh, I would agree. Ain't that right, Dale? Oh, you right about that.
Oh, you're both right.
Sketchy, pointing at Skeezy beside him, said, "See? The Creator is smiling at you. I say today is your lucky day because you have the chance to gain eternal life."
Please.
let's just kill him.
Well, then I guess you've never heard of the Murphy. All right, fine. You don't want to see him.
Oh, I've heard of the Murphy, all right. Seen him even.
You seen the Murphy, huh? What's he look like?
It's a taller fella.
Taller fella? Really? Taller fella, skinny as a beanpole, short, scraggly hair, dark blotches on his skin.
The people across from them leaned in to examine the picture of Murphy and then glanced at Skeezy beside them, realizing that this guy was indeed Murphy. It is also clear from this that the image of Murphy in folklore has been demonized with all sorts of superpowers. Sketchy continued to spin his tail, claiming that a bite from Murphy would grant them immortality.
One bite at a time.
What do you mean, bite?
I'm glad you ask. You want to be immortal? Old Murphy here's got to bite ya. But everything comes at a price, and it looks like you got plenty to go around in that there wagon of yours.
It was obvious Sketchy had his eyes on their supplies. Of course, these young people were bewildered by the cunning merchant's words. They immediately allowed a man named Dale to be the first to accept Murphy's bite. Sketchy was even on hand to give Dale very expert instructions on how to relax or else the muscle contractions would release the acid counteracting virus. While speaking, he stuffed a loaf of bread he had stolen at some point into 10K's clothes.
Hold still, Dale! Hold still!
Skeezy, incredibly cooperative, bit Dale so hard that blood flowed freely. The men quickly asked Dale if he felt immortal. Dale, utterly confused and not feeling any different but not wanting to seem foolish, pretended to be excited. The others, thrilled like children at the prospect of eternal life, eagerly traded their belongings for a bite from Murphy. Afterwards, they were grateful to Sketchy. Very professionally, Sketchy instructed them to rest for 12 hours to let Murphy's virus fully metabolize in their bodies. All I can say is, being a con artist requires some skill. Just then, as 10K reached for something from Sketchy, the stolen loaf of bread in his clothes fell out, leading to an awkward moment. Realizing they'd been duped, the four men chased after the trio, seeking revenge. As night fell on the banks of the Mississippi River, Team X also set up camp to rest. Roberta looked deeply troubled. Doc said there's a light flickering across the river, surely a signal from 10K. But Vasquez and Roberta both shook their heads. They saw nothing and thought Doc's vision was failing. Annoyed, Doc wondered if, for the bounty in California, even his brothers in arms no longer cared. As they were about to start arguing, Roberta quickly stepped in to mediate, but her attitude clearly indicated she also believed Doc was mistaken. Unbeknownst to them, the light was indeed from 10K. hoping his teammates might see it. But alas, the next day, Squad X continued towards California. Doc saw a simple rowboat from afar, excitedly suggesting they cross the river to find 10K. Addie and Roberta wanted to speak up, but Doc gestured for silence, determined not to abandon 10K.
What do you expect us to do? Wait for you?
Do whatever you want.
Then we head west.
Am I the only one that cares that 10K is out there?
Of course not.
I'm sorry.
Due to Cassandra's death, Murphy was even less likely to search for 10K, so he demanded that Roberta prioritize their mission, or he wouldn't continue towards California. Disappointed, Doc declared, "Go complete your mission then. I must find 10K. Roberta, seeing Doc's resolve, ceased her attempts to dissuade him, only saying they'd head south towards Gina Bridge. If you make it there by boat, rejoin us. If not, then let's wish each other well." Doc nodded. He knew it would be hard to survive without the group, but 10K was as important as his son, and so, they parted ways, their fates unknown to each other. Meanwhile, Sketchy and his brother wandered with 10K, lucking upon a van with keys inside. Unknown to them, it belonged to human traffickers. They drove down the road and soon came to a small town. What's weird is that from a distance, someone smiled at them and waved kindly for them to stop the car. Sketchy, unaware of what was happening, had to forcibly maintain his composure, clearly realizing these people recognized the van.
Usually you're right on time, but no matter. Swenson, get these old boys a drink. I don't think we met. It's usually the other two.
Oh, those two clowns? Former employees.
Sketchy realized the van was meant for deliveries here, so he quickly posed as the boss and claimed to have fired the previous employees. As the van door opened, it revealed several newly mutated zombies.
For the mute. Pretty good, my ass. Well, look, you done outdone yourself.
Sketchy was calm on the surface, but in his heart he was shocked. This car is specialized in transporting zombies. And catching living people mutated. A man, in high spirits, introduced himself as Burr, the controller of the town. Sketchy also introduced himself, but with fake names. Burr was so pleased with the shipment that he guided the three men into the house, ready to entertain them. The town seemed stress-free and comfortable, with many people living there and zombies used as free labor in a central turntable. The previous human traffickers' work, living people enjoyed life while the dead labored. At this time, 10K seemed to have a sense of what looked back at the warehouse, where a woman was standing. The corner of 10K's mouth immediately showed a smile, but unfortunately the girl did not look like she wanted to pay attention to 10K. Before 10K could see enough, Bird dragged them to other places to visit. The following activities were more comfortable. With beer to drink and women for company, the Sketchy brothers couldn't stop grinning, but only 10K was distracted. Looking up, 10K saw the girl again, seemingly signaling him. Unable to contain himself, he followed her into an alley, but as 10K arrived, Sadie pointed a gun at him from behind.
Give me one reason. I don't need much. This world will not miss you. And you may be skinny, but that will can always use another body, ain't that right?
He quickly explained they hadn't killed anyone, just found the van and were unaware of its contents. He clarified that he was part of Squad X, escorting Murphy to California, now separated from them.
What's he like?
He's a jerk. But the rest of them, they were good people. We were trying to save the world.
Sadie lowered her gun, sensing 10K was telling the truth. Sadie sadly said that her second husband had recently passed away and, after becoming a zombie, was tied up in the mill, unable to find peace. The town is entirely evil, she said. She stayed for only two reasons. First, to help her husband find release, and second, to watch the town be destroyed.
I wouldn't mind seeing that too.
Meanwhile, the Sketchy brothers were chatting and laughing with Burr, unaware that Raleigh, who had lost the van, had walked into town. The fake Sketchy was about to slip away, but it was already too late.
I need to make a call.
In fact, the town's behind-the-scenes controller is the Zero Drug Cartel. Today, the second-in-command, a Scorpion, had come here specifically because he heard about 3 thieves who dared to steal the van.
Session, the Honorable Judge Scorpion presiding.